Hello and welcome to the RoRoShow. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Really glad to be here. How are you?
I'm very, very good too. I'm so glad that I'm honoured that you you agreed to come on the show. I'm a huge fan. Yeah, I was just saying earlier how I love listening to your mixes on SoundCloud. I love your Spotify stuff. I haven't actually listened to the band that you're in yet that much. I really like the work that you've done.
Oh,
But
thank you.
I just wanted to know, how did you get started in music?
Um, so I've always been playing instruments and stuff since I was quite young. I moved around a lot. I lived in like a bunch of different countries. My family all spoke loads of languages, and I was always kind of more drawn to like music as a form of communication, I guess. So for me, I was kind of always really hungry to like explore more and learn more and play more instruments, and just like it just seemed really sort of like in sort of endless exploration, endless adventure, kind of doing music stuff. And then through school continued, and then when I came to uni, I met the guys from Flamingods, and the band was formed then.
That's pretty cool.
Um, yeah, which was really nice. And then yeah, just kind of
So
been doing that ever since.
what did you study at uni?
I did 3D design.
3D
It's kind
design.
of like a combination of sculpture and like product design, basically.
So you said that you lived in different countries, and were you inspired by the country itself, and did you meet people there, and that kind of got you into playing different kind of music and different styles and learning different instruments?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that definitely had like a really big part in I guess my current and my current musical output, because I've always been going back and forth between wherever I've lived and India. So I lived in like Italy and Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Albania, and then I moved here. Um, but India's always been kind of home base. And I've always been surrounded by loads of people from different countries and different cultures. So it's always been like pretty fluid. Like musically, it's always been really fluid because I was having this conversation with someone else recently. It's like you're always being exposed to music in the same formats, like ceremony, celebration, ritual, and they're always kind of taking different, like they're expressed in different ways, but it's very much the same thing. So I guess, I can see how I was very much inspired by that. And listening back to stuff and doing mixes and writing music, and even with the band, we kind of have a very similar ethos towards making music.
So do you guys think about that quite a lot? So when you do make music, is there a conversation about what kind of sounds that you want to put into the or fuse in the music that you make?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. For both me and the band, that's one thing that's kind of really developed within my practice as well, my songwriting. But with the band, like we really strive to kind of bring in as many different cultures as possible, because all of the guys grew up abroad as well. And all of them grew up in a country which isn't really their home, other than Kamal. So all of us have had this similar sort of, and I guess this happens in London as well. It's a really, really kind of deeply deeply multicultural society. So like you're constantly being surrounded by other people living here and calling it home, so they celebrate as they would home, they eat and live and play music as they would back home. So it's really liberating. So for us, sorry. So following on from that, it's kind of like you can see how a lot of these influences seep into the London sound, or the sound that kind of envelop a lot of people's music practice here. For us, we pick up instruments when we're on tour. It's a lot of stuff that we were kind of growing up with, that we want to bring into our sound. And for me as well, it's like just bringing in all of these things that feel really familiar to me, because it's kind of what I was surrounded by.
What is the songwriting process like for you? So do you guys have, do you like make the rhythm, for example, concentrate on one particular part, and then someone else starts to concentrate on other things? Like, is it quite different according to the song? Or do you have like a quite structured way of making music?
No, no, no structure at all. It's like it's always it's a kind of case by case on a case by case basis. Like someone will come up with a melody, or someone will get a new drum machine, or like Kamal plays his taisha goto, like a Japanese sort of stringed instrument. If he comes up with a melody on that, or if someone comes up with a melody on keys, we'll go with that, or a rhythm or a sample. It's always different, and that's good. kind of refreshing about it.
And do you ever have disagreements? Like, I want to sound like this, and then someone else plays something, and you're like, oh, I have to go with it, because I find that quite troublesome. Because I should admit that, should I? I'm in a band as well, and
Yeah, yeah.
and
I checked you guys out.
oh, thank you. And yeah, I'm really into the songwriting side of things. I love like coming up with like rhythm and melodies.
Yeah.
But I like to think I'm like the sole songwriter that concentrates on the bulk of the song. But I think everyone has their own input. So when you play them with them and you practice, you hear different things and you want to fuse it in. Do you have sort of disagreements about I want it to sound like this? Or, is it quite challenging? What is it like working with a band compared to working
Yeah.
for yourself?
It's interesting you say that because, like, you never hear these disagreements. When I was listening to you guys, it sounds great. You guys have a very, very 90s, like, I don't know, it has this real 90s feel, like a really nostalgic feel when I listen to it, like a kind of very, like, Smashing Pumpkins-esque vocal harmonies and stuff in there, which I liked.
I really
But
appreciate
yeah,
that. Thank you.
yeah, I mean, of course we have disagreements. Like that's the nature of being in a band. But the disagreements aren't like they're only kind of hurdles to overcome. Like what is really good, which is the kind of the best thing about the band, and it's the kind of the biggest challenge, is that we do everything democratically. So we always have to agree on everything, which means that we speak a lot. We have we have a really sort of endless dialogue, going on about what things are sounding like in the direction and how we want them to be and stuff like that. So a lot of talking and some playing, but it's good. No, I mean, it works well for us. It's kind of thinking about things a lot, which is really nice.
Yeah, and so when you first of all, if you want to work on an album, for example, you've got maybe 11 songs you're going to work on. Do you like have a conversation about conceptualizing the sound, thinking about what you want it to kind of what kind of fusion, what you want to fuse together, and then you guys experiment together? Is that an initial discussion on what you want to create? Are you into kind of like albums coming together and sounding like a particular way, or do you just go track by track?
I think like with both myself and with the band, when we're writing, it's like you kind of do loads of stuff and then you start to and then you can kind of start to collect things, ideas start to form, because there'll always be a through line. If you're writing them at the same time, things tend to have a sound based on kind of how everyone's feeling and what's going on. And then when you pull tracks together, when I pull tracks together, or even with the band, you then listen to them together and tweak things accordingly in a way to weave a bit more of a narrative between things, I think, to make it a bit more cohesive and like a body of work that people can kind of understand.
Mm-hmm. And so you do production work as well. I know you're a multi-instrumentalist. So what do you play exactly? And do you concentrate on the mixing process and mastering process as well?
Yeah, so in the band we all swap around a lot. So I play drums, synths, percussion, and a bit of bass. And then in the studio I'm playing keys quite a lot and doing a lot of production basically for my own stuff. And then I mix myself and then I get someone else to master basically. I'll do like kind of crap DIY master job here.
Yeah, just put the limiters up and that's it, done.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So you do 3D design. You said you study 3D modeling, is that correct?
3D design, so I specialized in furniture.
Okay. So does that influence your sound at all? Is the thought process in that work similar? Is there parallels to that and what you do when you make music? Are you one to analyze the music making process? Because I know some people don't necessarily like to go into that. And
no, massively. I think that I thinking more about it now, it's informed my writing process so much, because like what we were doing on the course was a lot of like making and a lot of research and prototyping, and it really helped me develop my critical thinking. So kind of rather than just making stuff like or writing music or whatever, you really have to develop an idea and be prepared to prototype things, in the same way as a track's not done until you've let it exist in various different iterations so you know how it works.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, that's now I know that this is right, this is good.
Yeah, this is your process, this is how you want to do things. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it's quite interesting because for me, making music is quite a fluid process. It's almost like I don't even think about it; I just do it. And sometimes if I
Yeah.
overthink it, sometimes it doesn't necessarily sound how I want it to. But I find the mixing process is very kind of analytical. You have to kind of look at each stem. It's a different
Mm.
type of mindset that you have to have. And I find that sometimes quite challenging, and I like to rely on someone that's a bit more, that's really good at that kind of stuff to just get with that stuff, and I concentrate on the songwriting. But
Yeah, yeah.
but I feel like now with a lot of musicians, they are concentrating on the whole process. So
Yeah,
not
definitely.
not only the making music side, but the mixing and the mastering, and also the marketing side. Do you find that you're okay and you're good at doing the whole thing, the 360 view, or do you like one thing more than others?
I mean, I certainly can't say that I enjoy the marketing or social media side of things at all, but
Yeah.
it's got to be done. Yeah, like I've really enjoyed getting more into the mixing process and like actually, sometimes it feels like such a drag actually, and I don't enjoy it. But sometimes, like I was just working on a remix before this, it can really help inform my songwriting. Like sometimes I'll take things to places that I wouldn't have based on the mix and playing with depth and space and perspective in a way, let's say. So that kind of that side of thing, and also I listen to quite a lot of let's say more avant-garde electronic music. So kind of playing with space becomes quite an interesting tool to use. Um, I mean, from the perspective of doing all this stuff, I guess I do it because I'm interested in, I don't know. It's like nowadays it's just so much more than just writing the music and playing, right? So it's just being involved in all of that stuff. I'm lucky I've got like um managers and record label and stuff, so they help me out a lot, and like a team like who basically help me with a lot of that stuff. So I have support. I have a support network.
That's good. It's always
For
good to
me.
have a support network. But do you think that making music has changed with time? So I know it might be a really hard question because I don't know if you were alive 30 years ago, nor was I. But do you think that being an artist has changed? You have to having that 360 view may not necessarily have been what it was like 30 years ago. Do you think that you have more control now? Is it a good thing, or do you think that it's almost like a little bit too much?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed tremendously. I was just about alive 30 years ago, but I certainly wasn't in the music industry. But yeah, I mean, like, it's it's a kind of like an endless debate, isn't it, really, about whether things were better or worse back then. I think the advent of social media changed everything. The advent of streaming changed everything. There was so much more money in the music industry back in the 90s, even up just about to the noughties, especially in the 80s. There was loads of money. There was loads less opportunity to get yourself out there and get yourself heard. So it was a lot more dependent on being discovered, A&R'd, or being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right people, whatever. Sorry if I'm just going off on one here, but like I guess now you can just get your music out there. You can also make and release music in an instant. There's producers who I know, like, that I've been following for years, like Flylo. I remember at one point there's two producers, one called Knowledge and one called Taku, and they were releasing like a track every single day. And eventually years later it's paid off, but for them it's just about making music. I don't know. It's so tricky to know whether it's better or worse. For me, I think it's hard because I find that social media and stuff like that can be quite demoralizing and quite debilitating, as well as being being a really valuable tool. Do you know what I mean? Because you often find yourself in the throes of this thing, this like putting stuff out into the ether, or like putting music out there, not knowing if it's heard. But at the same time, at least you get to put it out there a lot more easily.
Yeah.
You get to be in control.
Do you aspire to be a full-time musician? Is that like your ultimate goal? Is that what because it looks to me that you have lots of different sides, and you're very creative generally, right? You can do many different things.
Yeah.
But is that what you aspire to be, a full-time musician?
Funnily enough, it isn't actually. Because with the last few years, maybe the last since 2016, I've basically been on tour more or less full time, but I've always had a job to come back to. And I work as a chef, which I absolutely love. I work,
It's another creative type role.
yeah, I'm so lucky where I work. I'm kind of valued there, so they let me go on tour and come back whenever I want. And I work at a rehab, so it's like quite rewarding work. I get to do my own thing, make my own menus, I kind of have a lot of control there. And that works really well for me. It means I kind of balance things out. Doing just music feels quite sort of, I go through those phases and it's quite heady. So I really enjoy having more than one job. There's often times where I'll be on tour, get back off a flight, sleep for an hour, and go into work, and I actually really enjoy it.
Yeah. Is it as glamorous as people make it out to be? You know, going abroad, for example, and doing a show, and then having to come back and do your day job. You said that. Do you enjoy that, or is that actually quite challenging?
No, I love it. I love coming back and having like a really normal life and grounded, and like not talking about being on tour and just being like, yeah, I'm just back at work, just kind of doing my thing quietly, cooking and stuff, and really and listening to the radio and enjoying myself, and not being like, oh my God, I was in Spain like 8 hours ago. It's like, whatever, it's fine. I'm really happy to be back here and have a sense of normality. It's kind of quite grounding because you can get caught up in it all. I think it's not that. I mean, I don't know about glamour. It's nice. You do get like, we do get looked after well when we're abroad, but doesn't mean that we don't all have jobs. We're all still kind of moving through the motions of having to get by.
Exactly. So, tell me about your cooking? So, what do you specialize in particular cuisine?
I kind of grew up spending a lot of time in the kitchen, and my family have always really been into food. So of all the countries I've lived in, I've kind of picked up a lot, spent a lot of time like studying a lot of cuisines, a lot like both like here I've got maybe 20 or 30 cookbooks like that I've studied. Same with my sister's got like infinitely more than me and my mum. But I do a lot of Indian food, a lot of kind of North Indian food, a lot of Kerala food. What else? I do quite a lot of Middle Eastern stuff that I kind of picked up when I was living in Saudi, and a lot of Italian food, obviously, because I spent a lot of my childhood there in Italy. So yeah, stuff that I'm familiar with, I guess, stuff that like I know if it's right or wrong because I've kind of grown up eating that stuff.
Do you cook like how you make music? Is it quite similar in terms of you like to experiment and try different things and?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it kind of like very, very fluid and very loose.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, like, why did you move around so much? Was it just a family thing, or?
Yeah. So like, with my dad's work, he was working for the UN, and then he worked for the EU. So we moved, we moved fairly regularly, like every 3 or 4 years. Apart from Italy, where I lived there for like 7 years.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine what it would be like if I was to have moved around so much. I obviously I lived in London. I went to school in like near West London. That gives you a foundation. You get to know a particular kind of culture. But for you, it seems like you've been able to blend and learn, and be able to absorb so much. Do you think that you like that, or do you think that you have different types of experiences to other people that you can see some benefits that you have compared to other people?
Yeah, it's tricky. I was having this conversation with my girlfriend recently, and it's like they're just two heads of the same coin, really, because I do meet some people who are like, oh, I've had such unique experiences because I've lived abroad. And it's like, well, everyone's experiences are unique because we're all unique people. We're all living whatever experience that we're presented with through our own eyes, so it's much of a muchness. I know that's a really shitty answer to your question, but I mean, I've had, it's good, and having each thing will have its own challenges, won't it? Like moving around will certainly present its very evident challenges, but living in the same place and will also have those things, so
do you find,
I don't know.
Yeah, do you find yourself having sort of culture clashes, or do you find that actually you can understand people's perspectives a lot better?
I guess I understand perspectives better, or not better than anyone else. I understand them better than maybe I would have if I just stayed in, like, I don't know, Italy or Saudi. But it's difficult. I guess I know I wouldn't say better. I don't like that word, but I have a good understanding because I guess there's so many like cultural, social constructs which you wouldn't understand, or one doesn't understand unless you're there and presented with it. Like if you go somewhere on holiday, you start to realize that, like, it's taken me ages, even just in touring in France, to realize that, like, French people aren't rude, but they have culturally, they're a lot more forthright and a lot more blunt.
Mm.
And we're not like that here at all in the UK. So it's like, just, I don't know. Yeah. It's always just still learning. I'm still learning.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm just trying to think myself. I think being able to move around and experience different cultures definitely gives you grounding. But I think as humans, I don't want to bore you too much with I read this book called The Sapiens, and talks about.
Oh, I've been meaning to read that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
My
a good.
bandmate's reading that.
Yeah, it's a good book, and it talks about how humans are very kind of alike to be in one group, and there's another group, and we like to kind of think, oh, we're this one group and they're another group. But it seems like you're like this kind of multicultural, like being able to experience and see different perspectives. And I just wonder, does that affect the way you market your music as well? Do you just think of everyone and be like, everyone can relate to my music? You don't concentrate on a particular demographic.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think, like, we don't, myself or even with the band, we don't really think about who we're marketing it to, or like even with my EP, like, or when I'm writing, I don't think about like a certain audience. For me, it's about like trying to make something that sounds like it sounds right, like you're fusing all these things together, and it feels really good. It sounds really, really right. And actually, that makes it much worse to market to people, because people like things that are familiar to them.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to be not nobody. The general public and people who consume music don't want to be challenged. People like familiarity. That's why things that sound like other things do extremely well, because it's familiar to people. They already get it. Someone else has kind of done the hard work. That doesn't necessarily mean that people have intended to do that, but that's why, like, a lot of what you hear in popular music sounds very much the same as the other as another thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so what would you say in terms of advice to a lot of up and coming artists that have very different sounds and wanna make what's authentic to them, but not necessarily they don't necessarily think that there's an audience out there for them? What would you say? Just what would you say to them in terms of advice?
I would say, so this kind of goes back to our question about like the 360, like doing all the things. It can seem really overwhelming and it can seem really daunting, and also to think that I think it's a kind of multifaceted question. It's like, don't get hung up on like where you think you should be, or doing music full time, or having a career. Just be really, really happy that you're able to do it and express yourself musically, because there will be people who listen to it. And the thing that you don't realize is that there will be someone like somewhere on the other side of the world who's connected to what you're doing and who it's meaningful to. That's amazing. Even if it's one person, like that's literally fucking awesome that there's people out there listening to it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get hung up on numbers and stats and all these things. I think it's and analytics and all these whatever. It's we're presented with a wealth of information that can seem really overwhelming, and it can be a useful tool, but it can also be quite overwhelming. So I just say, like, stick to your guns, keep doing it, because if you doubt it and if you worry like that it's too weird, then just keep doing it. That's a good sign.
Good advice. I like that. So you're a DJ and you do songwriting. You're a multi-instrumentalist. You're a producer. I mean, I guess the list can go on. You're a chef. I guess the process is going to be different for each of them, right? And with your DJing versus songwriting, what is the difference there? Because I've listened to some of your mixes and you're very creative with the transitions. So are you? I feel like you fuse your songwriting with your DJing to a certain degree. Do you find there is a blend there?
Yeah, actually, you know what? My process for all of them is the same. I think it's like you have a format which you present things in, like with food or with whatever. People experience it in a certain way. Like they first see it and they smell it, and it's presented to them in whatever kind of, however, like dish or whatever. And there's like a first and second and third reaction, right? You kind of delve deeper as you experience it more deeply. Like when you're listening to a mix, or if you're hearing a song, something that hooks you in, then you're into it. Then you kind of get taken on a journey. You get it's and yeah, so it's like it's using that multi-dimensional experience to to grab people's attention, bring them in, and then play with them a little bit, play with their experience and their emotions within that, like with my mixes as well, with my songwriting. But let's say with the mixes, it's like obviously I'm going to throw some like complete curveballs. I want to take people on a journey, but I don't want it to be really jarring.
So you spend a lot of time to organize your set then. So you think about what you want, how you want to bring people in, and then like the middle where you want to change things up, and maybe have little snippets and little kind of transitions. Do you plan quite a lot, or do you go with the flow?
Yeah, I don't plan. I don't really plan them. I kind of do them. I like to spend time just mixing and getting familiar with tunes in the same way that I get familiar with ingredients or like things within songwriting, like synths and drum machines. But in the moment, it's kind of like, yeah, it's just thinking about and being in it and thinking about like where you can take it. Being like, I don't know, a lot of the time I'll be like, oh man, yeah, I definitely should play this track next. How can I make that work? How can I get it in there in a way that will make sense to people, that you'll get it. You're like, oh yeah, that's great. I wouldn't have expected that to come next, but this sounds great.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your setup. So when you DJ, you have what? I assume you're using vinyls. Are you a fan of vinyls? Vinyl
Yes, yeah, yeah.
decks.
I've got a whole wall of records here, records and MP3s or whatever, on CDJs.
So you mix it up, and then you have your kind of drum machines and your electronic stuff. And did you have like a mixer in between where you can kind of blend them all together? Is that how it
Yes.
generally works?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I've got like a setup here with a mixer and CDJs, and then my vinyl. I don't use drum machines and stuff like that so much within my mixing. I feel like there's enough within the songs, and I play around with effects and stuff to build things and make them a bit more exciting. But always trying to push myself and be better. Whenever I listen back to my mixes, I'm like, man, that was shady. I could definitely do that better.
So,
Kind
so,
of
so
learning.
tell me about that. So how do you critique yourself? Obviously, you're very multi-talented. You can do many different things. But do you have inspirations that you look towards? You can think, oh, this person's doing a great job doing that. I want to put that in my mix, and I want to, use what they have done in the way that I do things.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always listening to stuff and looking to stuff for inspiration and trying to see how other people can communicate certain ideas, and like sometimes, so like if I'm putting out a mix, this isn't always, but sometimes I'll go over it and I'll just tidy little bits up. And like say one not too long ago I was tidying up a mix and I was like, wow, this just sounds too clean now. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to be really slick and like well oiled. It needs to have a sort of, it's about kind of having an energy and communicating like in a certain way. But yeah, I definitely like look to loads of, I'm always looking to other people for inspiration, and it'll always come from wherever I kind of least expect it a lot of the time.
Are there particular artists or DJs that are really inspiring at the moment?
I listen to a lot of older stuff. I can't think about DJs. Yeah, I always struggle with this question. Like whenever I'm asked like who I'm listening to,
Or do you think that your style has changed with time? Do you think that what you liked maybe five years ago is different to what you're into now, and there's big changes in inspiration?
yes, yeah, infinitely. Like there was maybe a time where I'd be listening to loads of dance music and then I completely go off it, and then I'll be listening to loads of kind of jazz mixtapes and radio shows and things like that, and I find that way more interesting for a period of time. And I think these ideas marry in my head about, and it also changes like within circumstance. If I'm in a club, I'm just going to play like a very different set than I would at home, that's going to be consumed from home rather than in a club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who do I listen to? I don't know. Loads of stuff. Been listening to lots of Sun Ra and Barry Sanders recently, but also listening to a lot of like, I don't know, down tempo funky stuff as well, from like 60s, 70s. I've just made a playlist actually whilst I was procrastinating yesterday, which yeah, I'll send to you. Lots of like really like down tempo funky stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what makes a good track a good track? I mean, it's so puzzling because everyone has their own, what they enjoy different things. But like, is there a particular criteria that you have in your brain? You're like, oh, okay, that could work in my DJ set.
Um, oh, it's so many different things, but I think it's like,
Do Does
being
something
really honest.
does something reach out to you more than other things? Like, are you more of a melody focused person rather than rhythm? Is there like, something that really clicks with you first, and you're like, oh, actually, this is really good.
I would say like typically I'm rhythm, but it's just like something. It's um for me, it's like seeing things out of context, actually, thinking about it. So it's like hearing something and being like, oh, like I wouldn't have expected that there. Like that kind of catches you off guard, or like often like really funky things have little like musical motifs or melodies that you wouldn't expect in there. For me, I think what I look for is like something that sounds really unique, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that generally, like your lifestyle and the music that you like, kind of come together? Is being an artist a sort of multifaceted thing? It's just a way of living rather than what arts you like. Like if you got into something else or learn a new instrument, you probably would be able to get into it and use the same sort of energies that you have to kind of like learn it. Do you think that there is like fundamentals of being an artist that you just use in your life and that just gives you that variety?
I think it's tricky. I think it varies from person to person. Like for me, I've increasingly come to realize that I need structure. Like I need to know when to switch off. I need to know when to start and when to stop, and to give myself a framework to work in. Because that and like I have a very different lifestyle to a lot of other artists that I know. Like I wake up at like 6 in the morning and I like do my exercise and yoga and whatever, and then I work at certain hours, and then I try to stop certain hours. Previously, it would be like all over the place, work until like 11 o'clock at night, still wake up early, but like I'm finding to get. I'm really, really like obsessed with being productive. So like trying to maximize my productivity levels using like certain like tweaks, and do certain things like taking breaks and doing certain things at certain times that work well for me and make my brain feel better and more inspired and creatively charged.
So when did that change for you? Was it something that happened to you a couple of years ago that made you think, oh, I need to put some structure in my life and create some good habits?
Yeah, I mean, over the years, like, I was in therapy for like 8 years or something like that. So over the years of looking after myself and thinking and reflecting more and more and more about how to be better and be happier, I've sort of also looked, because I I care so much about what I do. It's not like like I don't know. Yeah, for me, music is obviously a big part of my career. So I need to look after myself and make sure that I'm happy doing it and that it works for me. So I guess it's been kind of, this skill has been accumulating over the years. And yeah, maybe over the last couple of years, and especially over lockdown, I've had a lot more time to be, kind to myself and like take it easy and not have social pressures and not have like as many deadlines as I would, and not be on tour all year round, which is very tiring.
Tell me more about your yoga practice. 'Cause I'm trying to get into that myself, and I saw on your stories you're into it as well. When did you start practicing yoga?
So I started practicing yoga in maybe 2000, like really got into it around 2007, I think 2007, 2008. It was when my mum was living in Dubai and she had a yoga instructor there, and he taught me for free when I was there. And he said, like, the only thing is that you have to share the knowledge. I don't want money from you, but you have to share the knowledge. And it
Oh,
was,
wow.
yeah, he taught me kind of Kundalini. Yeah, he taught me Kundalini yoga, and I've been practicing what I've learned ever since. But I recently was thinking I'd quite like to deepen my practice as well and spend more time. But such is life. There's always things that we want to spend more time on, isn't there?
Absolutely. And so, what does it give you? Does it just give you that peace of mind? And I know I've read a little bit about Kundalini and about breath work and kind of
Yeah, and energy flow and stuff.
energy flow. So, does that influence your creative process as well? Is that something that you sort of it kind of blends into your music process?
Yeah, definitely. More so now, actually. Again, over this last year, I've been spending a lot more concerted time and energy on like yoga and meditation practice. And now, a lot of the time when I'm working, I'm kind of looking to myself to see how my breath is, and how that feels, and often the decisions that I'm making or the way that things feel will be informed by that. Like just how I'm feeling often, rather than just like, does it sound good or is that right?
Yeah, it's almost like you can tell who your subconscious mind by the way that you're breathing. Is that right? Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
paying a lot more attention to the breath. Yeah.
that's very interesting. So, do you think that with COVID and lockdown number three, I think it is,
Who's lost count
I
now?
lost count. Do you think that you've spent more time to reflect as well? Has there been more downtime for you to think about your aspirations and think about what is more important to you?
Yeah, definitely a lot more time for that. And I know that I'm extremely privileged um, to have had that because I know it's been like such a harrowing time for so many people, been like so traumatic. I'm lucky that that hasn't been the case for me. So I've had like a time where I've been able to be a bit more connected to myself. Um, yeah, and think about that stuff. Think about because often I feel like you get really caught up in what you think you should be doing or pressures from with music, releasing stuff, staying current, doing whatever. Yeah, it's been good for me. I had I had kind of all my family different like traumatic situations come a few years prior, so I've kind of got myself now into a situation where this particular time has really benefited me.
And has it made you think, what you want to do in 2021? Hopefully, if we are able to leave our house, towards the end of the year or next year, has it given you like, have you got like a list of things that you want to do? Is there, do you have particular objectives and priorities that you put in your life and think actually these are more important, and didn't really think about them before as being important?
Yeah, I do. I goal set a lot actually, but I'm thinking about 2021, and I was talking about this to my girlfriend as well, and I can't think if I have like off the top of my head of what my real tangible goals were, but they're definitely to kind of better myself, like always kind of bettering myself at like songwriting, whatever, yeah, whatever it is. It's just kind of yeah, I don't know, more being just improving myself and yeah, I do have goals actually. It's like to whilst I'm not touring and whilst I'm not out seeing people write as much music as I can, write like one or two solo EPs, another collaborative EP, and writing with the band as well. So those are kind of the ones that I'm tied to, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like it's very easy to become very content, like just sort of just like, there's no need to do anything, right? I'm relaxed, I'm happy, although I know there's a lot of things going on in the world and I'm very privileged where I'm in my position. But what motivates you to want to just make art and do things and express yourself? There is what is the will that comes that you really that you sort of think about that you makes you want to just output?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's like
Because it's like with making music, for example. I mean, and thank you for hearing my music. But in terms of the reward aspect, you've created something. You've kind of released this baby out into the world, and people. This maybe you get like a couple of views or listens, and that's it, right? But you don't think about the money aspect of it. But you just enjoy creating it. So what is the motivations for creating art if there's no like kind of what is a reward for you? What does it give you?
I think it's just simply that you get to share something with people. You get to make people happy and share something that might be meaningful to them. It's the same thing as food as well. It's like you get to make other people happy by creating something for them that they wouldn't necessarily create for themselves or that they get to enjoy. And it's like that's at your you're at the helm of that. That's at your hands, and that's amazing. I think that's like the biggest reward, really. And also the fact that you get to be creative and adventure and explore within that. It's so exciting. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
Infinite possibilities within each thing that you create.
Exactly. The infinite possibilities is where also you can get lost too. Like, when do you know when to stop? And that's the big question. It's like, you make this album, you can spend hours and years, creating something and cultivating it and making it great. But then when do you know, do you have like a timeline when this is ready? This needs to be released now.
Yeah, I think just constantly learning about when that moment in time is and when the right time is, because there's definitely been stuff that that I've worked on that's been overproduced, that's been overwritten, and you can hear that and feel that. But then there's stuff that yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, like now, sometimes I'll write something that's like so stripped back, and be like, right, that maybe that's just done. Maybe that's it. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And do you think
Yeah.
that's a mature, you're like a mature artist because you've spent a lot of time creating, and you know, do you think it gets easier with time that you sort of know when this is right?
I think I don't know if it gets easier, but I think you start to ask the question more. I don't know. I wouldn't call myself a mature artist. I guess I've been doing like working in the music industry for about 10 years now. So like I but it's only in the last like maybe 4 years or so that I've really started to reflect and think about it a lot more. Because initially it'd be like really excited to just make music. That's it. Whereas now it's like reflecting on, yeah, all the other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So what are there any new projects that you're working on currently that you would like to let me know about and maybe reveal to us all?
So I'm working on I've got a few there's a few remixes in the pipeline which I'm finishing off. One for a band called Islet, who are a really brilliant Welsh band. Um, and two for this artist called Fale Nyoke, who's also signed with Moshi. He's a Ugandan kalimba player and singer. Amazing. So I've just done a couple of remixes which I hope are okay. It was really interesting for me because like I don't know what he's saying, and I'm playing with his vocals, and I'm trying to kind of, and I'm constantly thinking about whether what I'm doing is respectful to what he's saying. So kind of thinking about that a lot when I'm working on it. But yeah, I've done that, and then I've got a couple of radio shows coming up, a monthly on Box Out FM in India,
Amazing.
which I'm really excited about. Yeah, it's just kind of keep trying to keep creative, really. Just trying to, yeah, use this time to be productive. I'm usually really good at being by myself, and I am. I enjoy it, but I'm like, actually, I'm just gonna do as much as I can now, so that like when I get to see people again, I can just enjoy that.
Oh yeah, yeah. And how do how do you decide on who you want to produce with? Is someone to tell you that this is somebody looking, and are you quite open to other artists coming and talking to you and asking you to work with them?
Yeah, 100%. Like when I collaborate with people, like on my EP or on my solo stuff, I always try and collaborate with people who and send them stuff that's really different to their stuff. So
Right.
it's like I won't send them anything that I think would sound like the kind of thing that they'd make. I always send them something really different because I think that's really exciting, way more exciting to kind of take them out of their comfort zone
Yeah.
and me out of my comfort zone and like just like mash these things together and see if it works.
Yeah, and how do you collaborate with them? So are they the songwriters, and they say that we want to create this kind of theme, and this is the kind of sound that we're looking for, and then how would you kind of critique or sort of express them that you should to do things properly in a particular way? Like what is the way that you communicate with the different artists and
Oh, well, for me, it was like it's collaboration has either been within the band or with myself, but with my own practice, let's say, it's always been collaborating with people on my stuff. Um, but I'll never really exercise any control over it. The way that I have with the last EP, the way that I tended to collab with people was like, right, either this was pre-COVID and also during COVID, like, right, come into the studio. I want you to listen to the track maybe once or twice and do 3 takes and don't do any more than that.
yeah.
Like, and then, and I'll just work with whatever I have and I'll play with it and move it around. But for me, it was like for the last EP particularly, and I think within my process to keep things really organic. So like if there's things that like sound like mistakes or whatever, to just use them,
Hmm.
and like yeah, and be like, I want you to do whatever you want to do, and I will have to work with that. So it's just a conversation. So I'm
Yeah.
not really telling anyone to do anything, which maybe makes my life harder, but I think it's good.
I mean, there's a sort of this challenge with perfection and creating an organic, authentic piece. It's like this sort of constant juggle that you have to do, and I find that quite challenging sometimes because you don't know when you're overproducing something or kind of really over looking into things in too much detail. Does that come with practice and time?
Yeah, I think it does. But also like on the other side of that, it's like there are definitely things that I should have spent more time on or done more takes on, like certain vocals that I recorded that I recorded badly with crappy mics, and I was like just so caught up in this like let's just do it and be in the moment, and actually the vocals suffered because I didn't record them very well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
when actually I should have spent a bit more time maybe fine tuning, but. it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, it's quite interesting you say that because I've been recording and doing some demos, and I wouldn't say they're amazing takes, and they probably need to be re-recorded. But when you do re-record them, it doesn't have the organic feel that you did when you
That
first.
energy,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's really challenging to. I find it easier to make new music than to go back to music that I have made and actually try to produce it well and make it sound really good.
It's hard. It's that, it's that rule. First take is always the best one. Even if you're not happy with it, the first take is always going to be the best one
Yeah.
in a weird way. Yeah, that's the hardest thing because it's also I feel like you need a different kind of motivation to do that tweaking. You need to like mentally prepare yourself to be like, right, just yeah. That took me ages to get into that actually, and I still find it hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. But honestly, it's been so lovely talking to you, and I feel like I've gone over a little bit too much. But
No, no, good. Likewise. Thank you for taking the time.
no, absolutely. And where could we find you? So if you could promote, have you got a link tree or like some sort of links that we could
Yes,
push you
yeah, I'll
towards?
send you a link tree. But yeah, I mean, you can find me on Spotify, and my excellently curated playlists on there as well, to boot. And then yeah, on Bandcamp or wherever, all the usual spots.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll make sure to and link that below. And thank you so much for your time. I think I've learned so much from you actually.
Oh, great. Well, likewise, it's been really nice to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, take care. And hopefully
Yeah,
you want to come back on the RoRo show again.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're doing a great thing here. It's so nice. I'm looking forward to checking out the other ones as well.
Ah, thank you so much. All right, take care. Bye.
Yeah, I'll see you later, man. Take care.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye. I hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation. Must check out his mixes. He is super, super talented, and he is going to go places much beyond the RoRo show. But hopefully he'll come back if he's not too famous. But yeah, thank you so much. Make sure to follow myself on the links below. Make sure to follow him. And yeah, take care. Have a good day, and see you soon for some more awesome content.